Steve, hi.
Ah,
You're always ready.
yeah.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for your support of Ukraine, for your brand, Ukraine Freedom Project. Before we speak about politics, about other things, I want to thank you personally, you as a citizen of the United States and your country for help us. You look brilliant in this T-shirt. Yeah. For me also, it's a great honor. And what actually were the date of the 24th of February last year? Where you were, how you perceived this terrible news about Russian invasion, and did you believe that invasion would occur? It just was this illusion.
Well, I spent a year in Ukraine in 2018 and 2019. I worked for an American artificial intelligence company for another 2.5 years that had 500 employees in Ukraine. And so I had a lot of Ukrainian friends. And like the rest of the world, I wondered, what's going to happen? There's this buildup of Russians. What's going to happen? So I'd call my Ukrainian friends and I'd say, "Are you worried about the Russians?" Look, I've had 100,000 Russians on my border for 8 years. Don't talk to me, about Russians. And none of my friends believed it. So I had friends in D.C. that were, analysts that would call me and say, "What do you think? You've been there." It's like, none of my Ukrainian friends think it will happen. And then, of course, on the February 24th, I start calling my friends and I'm like, "Are you okay?" "They're bombing Kyiv. I don't know what to do." Yeah. My friends didn't have gas in their car and they weren't prepared. And
yeah, they really did not prepare.
Yeah, they weren't prepared. And so I spent 2 years as a civilian in Iraq at the beginning of that war. And when you spend a couple of years in Baghdad, you learn how to dodge missiles. You learn how to dodge mortars.
Yeah.
So I had that skill, and none of my friends in Ukraine had that skill yet. So I just, on day 5 of the war, I showed up at the Romanian border. I got some friends who were Donbass vets, who nobody had been part of the military at that point, and they picked me up at the border, and I went to Chernivtsi and established a base of operations to try to get my friends out of Kyiv and Kharkiv and other hotspots.
So it was chaotic actions, but you tried to support Ukraine, to help Ukrainians during the first very crucial week. And this is my next question about your public activity, because I saw you very active, very pro-Ukrainian in the media, in information, in social networks. You as a representative of, I would say, American civil society. And what is about your humanitarian activity? What is about information activity? How you estimate this sector, not political, I mean the civil sector, how important it was during the first weeks, hours of the war, I mean, in resistance against Russians?
Oh, it was phenomenal. The exciting thing for me was to come to Ukraine and see this sense of unity and see this people coming together and seeing small groups doing big work and big organizations, international organizations,
Charity, humanitarian.
yeah, these big organizations whose job it is to provide relief during these types of terrible events were not ready. They were not active. And as one example, I got a call about 3 weeks into the war from a friend of a friend in a place called Bobritsia, which is outside of Kyiv, and they said, "Listen, I'm trying to help this small clinic. We're taking wounded from the war. We're not set up for that. Can you help us with medical supplies?" So, and I said, "What about the big organizations? Where are they?" And they're like, "Haven't seen them." So I drove to Romania, bought a bunch of medical supplies, put it on my credit card, and then got it up to the Kyiv suburbs. And I went there and talked to them. And yeah, there was nothing. There was no boxes there from any of the international organizations you'd expect. So, who was doing the job?
Who?
Small organizations, like volunteer organizations, organizations like mine, other Americans
So
and
it was
Europeans.
self-organized, I would say, it's a real resistance inside the civil society.
Yeah, exactly. And the willingness of people of Ukraine just to jump in and run towards danger was really impressive. And so it was a great thing to be a part of.
Thanks for your such kind of sincere words. My next question concerning the help of your country and generally maybe of the West countries, but mostly Americans in this war, this resistance. I mean, these weapon things, humanitarian supplies, and money, financial support. We have plenty of different kind of support from the United States. I want to ask you as an independent expert, I would say, about all these issues, how you see this weapon supply from the United States. Is it politically maybe some kind of problems inside your country, or we have bipartite support? What happened from the political point of view if we try to analyze American help?
That's a great question. And as you alluded to, there's a lot of problems inside my country right now. And nobody can take anything for granted. So a majority of Americans, I think it's 60% right now, want to help Ukraine. But that 40% is a big number, the 40% who don't want to help Ukraine. And so I think that the Ukrainians have done a very good job. President Zelensky's visit last fall was brilliant, but you got to keep that going. And so here's some of the things I would suggest. If you're Ukrainian, get on social media.
And
right?
to contact with Americans.
Yeah, find Americans. If you speak English, figure out a way to contact Americans, and just tell them about your life. Just posting people in America, the important people, the journalists, the politicians, they're on Twitter. Get on Twitter. Just post photos from your life, post news stories, and then try to reach out personally to people in America. This stuff makes a difference.
So you want to say that the direct influence from Ukrainian society, community, directly on the American public society, could be useful.
Oh yeah.
So the public opinion is so important now in the United States, in the West generally.
Yeah. Reach out to people like you in America. If you're a person of faith, reach out to people in America who share your faith. If you're a doctor, reach out to doctors in the United States. If you find people like you, and then reach out to them.
Good advice. So, what can you say if you want to say something about the weapon which we get now directly from United States? I mean, as a political expert, as an independent expert. I mean, how you mentioned that you were in Iraq. You can compare the quality of what can you say?
Well, here's the great news is that the trends in this fight favor Ukraine. And so here's the way I see it is, let's look at the Russians. You've got conscripts who are poorly trained. They don't want to be there. They are poorly led, and the Russian leadership was bad prior to the Ukrainians killing 20 Russian generals last year. Putin has cycled through 3, 4, 5 commanders. And the reason that the Russian army is so bad is because the commanders all have yachts in in the Caribbean, or I'm sorry, in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And so now they're dragging out, the Ukrainians have destroyed about a third of their tanks, and they destroyed the good stuff because they pulled out the good stuff first. Now they're pulling out World War II era tanks. And now contrast that with the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are tired, that's for sure, but they're also highly motivated. The Ukrainians are, they're battle hardened. They, they're getting NATO training. So they're getting some of the best training in the world, and they're getting some of the best weapons in the world. And when I was in Iraq, I made friends with the tank crew of an M1A1 Abrams, and like the armor on an M1A1 Abrams is like if the narrowest part is like this thick. Contrast that with a T-72 or a T-90, and there's a lot of thin spots in those tanks. And what I saw in what I saw in Iraq was that, and you can look this up, there was not an Abrams that was lost to hostile fire. There were 7 Abrams lost, and they were lost to friendly fire. So, which is one tank crew mistaking an Abrams for a T-72 and blowing it up. So, the Abrams tank currently has a perfect record against Soviet-era tanks, and the Challenger is similar, the Leopard is similar. So, as the Ukrainians get these amazing weapons, I think that the rate at which they're able to take land it becomes faster.
Okay, it's very, very interesting. I think in the future we can make another interview concerning the weapon things. My last question concerning the future, because on the one side we see the unique resistance of our nation, of the soldiers in the front line. On the other hand, we also see the construction process of the new political nation. What advices can you give us which we can follow in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. One, I'm not saying anything surprising when I say that Ukraine has to tackle the corruption problem. And what I see is I see a bunch of people who are highly motivated. I talk to people and I say, well, what do you think corruption's going to go in Ukraine? And people say to me, we're not going back to that way. Too many people have died. And so I think that when you pay the cost like this for your freedom, it becomes very, very valuable, and you're not going to let anyone tarnish it. So I think that there's going to be a bunch of highly motivated people who are going to change the way that business is done in Ukraine. And I think the war has been a natural filter. People talk about the Monaco Brigade and people who have left and gone to these, Miami, Monaco, all these fabulous places. That's a great filter, because the people that are left here in Ukraine, again, they're highly motivated. They are paying a high cost to preserve their country, and they're going to fight to keep Ukraine moving forward. The people that left, some of them, and many of them had to leave because women and children and some people have to go abroad and make money to send taxes back to Ukraine. But some of the people that left, that's a good thing.
So you see now, as I understood correctly, the huge chance and potential for an opportunity to build a new, strong political nation society. I mean, the civil society and then the political nation. We have a certain kind of chance, and corruption cannot. I think it would not disturb this process.
Yeah, here's how Ukraine could screw this up: is that Ukraine has created a bunch of goodwill by being the bravest country in the world and taking on the Russians and taking the second most powerful military in the world and changing it into the second most powerful military in Ukraine, right? There's a lot of respect built up for Ukraine for this, and people want to help. So there's going to be investors, private investors, public money that's going to come in. And if there's a big corruption scandal, that money is going to go away, and Ukraine is going to have a lot of problems. So
to prevent such kind of things, we have to.
Oh yeah. I don't know, man. I only speak 50 words of your language. I don't even.
But you have already explained. It depends on the society. It depends
so here's what you do: is you hold your politicians accountable. You hold your neighbors accountable, because corruption starts at a small level, and if in New York, one of the mayors had a broken window policy. And he said, let's fix all the broken windows. And what happened was that it showed that people cared. And the small stuff stopped some of the bigger crime. And so people started saying, okay, this is worth caring about. So it's kind of the same way here. Stop the small stuff. And then everybody will be united to hold the big people accountable.
I like your words. Thank you for your interview.
Hey, great to spend time with you, man. Always enjoy it.
Thanks for your support. Thank you for everything.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.